Peacemaker Season 2 is probably the worst thing that James Gunn has created so far, which sucks coming from someone who didn't care very much for Creature Commandos either. Now, Peacemaker in general, I think everyone can agree, has been a pleasant surprise these last few years. He was in a good movie, and he had a pretty good TV show, and now he's doing all kinds of stuff in the comics. But unfortunately, his show and movie were made by the characters around him, and by the time that we get to Season 2, I'm starting not to care about the characters in the show. In the trailer for Season 2, we see an alternate dimension where everything is better and Harcourt is dating Peacemaker, so naturally the show takes most of its runtime to reveal these things. Like, we learn that the alternate dimension is full of Nazis in episode 6 out of 8. When everyone knows from the beginning that everything's going to go wrong eventually. And for these 6 episodes, the characters don't really do anything. Like, Adebayo is trying to start a spy business, and that's all she does for most of the show. Vigilante is whining that Chris isn't treating him well, and Harcourt is getting into fights and just being generally pissed off. John is... well, actually, Economos is the one character this season who I think is good. But when you put all this on paper, you're going to say it's okay for this season to be much slower. It's supposed to be more pensive and have more character development. But that's simply not what's happening for anyone outside of Economos and Harcourt. Chris is a selfish POS this season who wants to date an alternative version of a woman who won't have him. He doesn't notice that the world he likes is full of Nazis. He killed like 20 people fighting against that oppression. And all he does the whole season is run away from his problems until he goes to prison. And then he mopes in prison, and then the other characters just forgive him for being a selfish moron. Chris is genuinely a significantly worse person this season, and it's tough to feel bad for what he's going through when legitimately it is all his fault anyway. And honestly, for most of the show, he feels like a side character, which might be the worst part. This is your reminder to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, I saw YouTube introduce something called hype points. I don't really know how that works, but it can hurt if you give me some, so please, don't make a brother beg. Adebayo kinda just hangs out for most of the season, being the voice of reason for most of it, sure, but still. And her thing is that her girlfriend is breaking up with her because their dreams are clashing. And then, in the final episode, they officially break up. But not because Adebayo learned any life lessons, it's because Judo Master just told her how selfish she was being. Like, what? You had 8 episodes to have Adebayo learn something, and then you just had to have another character tell her? Like, I'm the biggest Adebayo defender, but this is a lot. However, it does fit in with Judo Master being Buddhist, so that's kinda cool. However, Adebayo is no longer the resident finger blaster of the team. Her title has been revoked. I will say, even if Harcourt has regressed this season and starts off way worse than she's ever been in a way that doesn't make very much sense, outside of being broke, her arc does feel complete by the end of the season. She's looking for a purpose in life and a way to make money, as well as being more in touch with her emotions, and she does technically accomplish those things, so I can't complain too much, but still, waiting to show us what happened on the boat till over halfway through the last episode is just... why? It's not serving a purpose or building tension, especially since everyone is just going to assume Chris and Harcourt had sex anyway, and then you reveal all they did was kiss. I'm not saying the kiss wasn't emotionally significant, but you could have revealed that before we were like 6 hours into the story. Speaking of characters who were retconned, what the hell did they do to Rick Flag Sr.? Sure, he was pretty damn useless in Creature Commandos, I get it. All he did was clap cheeks, and while he was serving the government, he didn't really save anyone or have a meaningful arc. But he didn't seem this deranged in that show or Superman. He was working with a team of metahuman criminals. Now he's become a psychopath who claps cyborg cheeks instead of human ones and wants to put all metahuman criminals like the ones he was working with in prison for life in an alternate dimension. Making all this worse is that the person who is his primary motivation, the man who killed his son, isn't even a metahuman, so his distaste for metahumans kinda comes out of nowhere. And him working with Lex so closely kinda just takes it home that Flag's kind of the villain with no redeeming qualities that I've seen, even in Creature Commandos. He's not the morally gray character we were promised, at least. And Peacemaker is such a douche this season that I don't even really feel bad when Flag beats the brakes off of him. Like, Chris kinda deserved it. Flurry, Bordeaux, and Judo Master are all fun, if pretty uninteresting. I kinda like that they become new members of the 11th Street Kids, and they're pretty funny aside from Bordeaux. I'd probably like the cyborg lady more if she didn't seem like such a villain towards the middle of the show. I know it's supposed to come off like a twist reveal that she's not as bad as we thought, but it comes off more like, why were you doing all that? Why were you acting like a villain if you're not one? And again, to the show's credit, I actually like John Economos a lot. He's still pretty funny, and he's kind of the heart and soul of the team aside from Adebayo. And they make a good point at the end about how his cowardice is something he's able to overcome anytime the team really needs him or Chris really needs him, which is really admirable. He's probably the most, hero-ish of the team, and I like him a lot. He also is probably the funniest character this season.
Are you in or not?
I'm not. Fuck this.
Then you're fired.
I'm in.
I'm partnering you up with our new agent. Rip Jagger.
Who the fuck is Rip Jagger?
Hey, fatty.
Fuck!
And then you got Vigilante, who's my least favorite this season. It's funny because Adrian is a psychopath murderer, a child who doesn't listen, and he's not very funny, along with being a douche to his mom and basically everyone on the team outside of Chris and Adebayo. I think his psychopathic tendencies were a lot cuter in season 1 because we just assumed that he'd eventually grow out of them, but he still hasn't. Like when he went to jail to try and kill Chris's father, and then he got really sad when he made things worse and showed some actual emotion. I thought that was just the beginning of his change, but no, he's still just a terrible human being who usually does more harm than good. See, most of the characters in season 2 are either ones you don't want to root for very much like Adrian, or their characters have been retconned. Take Harcourt for example. Was she pretty tame and reserved last season? Sure, but in season 1 in Suicide Squad, she was not a hormonal, toxic, deranged woman. She has regressed so far from who she started as that it's kind of a joke, and it's not even really resolved by the end of the season. She just stops acting like this and picking fights. Aside from some of the blatant poor writing, you just have a season of television that's pretty boring and sometimes pretty cheap. For one thing, season 1 felt a lot more real, like everything took place in a small town where Peacemaker lived. You had the safe house, the bar, the senator's mansion, all these places and sets that felt tangible and lived in. This season for some reason feels way more fake and artificial, and it's hard to say why. The color grading's really weird and vivid, similar to Superman but still pretty different. The sets are way too clean and feel very fake. The alternate universe in general, I know it's supposed to feel fake, but this is still supposed to be a lived-in universe, right? Earth X is a big deal in the comics, it's not just a one-off, and I'd be very surprised if the DCU never gets back around to it. And Earth X was kind of the whole sell of the show. We didn't know it was Earth X at the time, but the trailer made it seem like the whole point of this season was the alternate universe, and we barely even spend 2 episodes there. I'm sure they wanted to keep details about that universe hidden so they don't write themselves into a corner later, but it made the universe feel drastically shallow, and there's no good world building there. I also thought that it was funny that they only had Flag Jr. back for a single episode, and then he just doesn't pop back up in Earth X for some reason. That's kind of funny. And the stuff in Earth X also feels unimportant. Like, we learn that it's a world of Nazis, and then we just leave. And Earth X legitimately doesn't even matter to the finale episode at all. The characters there are shallow, and I understand that they're supposed to be for the most part. But what about Keith and Augie? August just dies right after we learn that he's basically a better person in a world of Nazis, and Keith doesn't die, but he just gets shelved for later? Are you serious? I guess I just feel like this whole season felt like a Scooby-Doo chase sequence. First, Flag's watching Peacemaker for dimensional rift reasons, then Peacemaker goes to the universe again, and then he's gotta take the portal and run, and then Juno Master tracks him down to the cabin and chases him into the portal. Then the team takes the portal to Adrian's house, and then Peacemaker finally surrenders. I know the plot I just described sounds incredibly bare bones, but I didn't cut that much of it out. There's just a bunch of fat that needed to be trimmed. Like, there's a whole subplot about an eagle hunter trying to hunt down Eagly, who is, I guess, king of the eagles or an eagle god or something, and then the hunter dies like a coward and that stuff never comes up again. Bordeaux ends up being a cyborg. That detail only matters in one scene where Chris's life is threatened. Then it doesn't really matter that she's a cyborg. The 11th Street kids have a party on a rooftop, and sure, there's a bit of character work, I get it, but the whole scene has the fakeness and artificial feeling that you just can't shake. And that's the whole season. There's so much stuff that the audience doesn't care about, and it doesn't have anything to do with Chris, and all the while it just feels artificial and fake. Whereas the last season didn't really do subplots per se, at least the ones that didn't matter. It felt like a single cohesive story with a lot of parts, and the characters were more normal and lived in and had cohesive arcs that made sense. This season feels like a long, bloated movie with artificial scenes and sets and fights. And the trademark James Gunn scenes. You know, the ones where the characters start rambling and arguing about something, and it's supposed to be funny, and the scenes are always way too long and don't accomplish anything. Yeah, we got those this season, but they're not even that funny more than half the time. Another big old chunk of fat that ends up being unnecessary. Look, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend this season is bad or that it makes the show bad, but it is such a far cry from the peaks of last season that it's kinda sad. And I get the emotional values of this season. There were times where I really empathized with some of the characters, but none of that is good enough to make me call this season good. It's very mediocre. And all the retconning gets old when it's just to give characters reasons to do what they do. And that's why Peacemaker, the TV show, not the hero, is never going to be one of the greats now. I'm not really sure why Season 1 was put in the conversation of The Boys and The Penguin and things like that, and I know people aren't comparing it to Daredevil, right? But that doesn't mean it'll ever be on the level of a CW show, obviously. Season 1 was really good, Season 2 was mediocre, so Peacemaker, while not really one of the greats, is a good show overall. And I would recommend it if you liked his character in the Squad movie, and while I didn't care for Creature Commandos that much, that show and this season are basically on the same level for me. It's really just a hiccup in a long line of James Gunn's brilliance, and that doesn't make him a bad writer or director, both things he is stellar at. It just means that you can't make as many movies and shows as he has without stumbling here and there. Peacemaker Season 2 gets a 5.5 out of 10, and while I'm technically glad that I watched it, I'm not glad that it isn't a little bit better. I appreciate you making it to this point in the video. If you enjoy talking about video games, movies, TV shows, and superheroes and stuff, you should absolutely like the video and you should subscribe to the channel. You've subbed to channels worse than this one. And I mentioned the hype points earlier. Again, I don't know how that works, but it can't hurt if you give me some, so please don't make a brother beg. Or not, that's fine. Play nice, people.